Hello and welcome back to another video review, this time for the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more reviews like this, and please leave a comment below letting me know if you enjoyed the film or not. The first character I will talk about is Spider-Man / Peter Parker, played by Andrew Garfield. I liked his character far more in this movie than I did in the first one. For me, he was more like a good Spider-Man in this movie than the last one. I'm not sure how I feel about his interpretation of Peter Parker in this movie, because I feel like nothing really changed there. What did change, though, was him trying to protect Gwen Stacy at all costs. Throughout the movie, Peter was having a lot of visions of Gwen's father, and Peter is starting to feel guilty about dating Gwen Stacy because he is putting her in danger. I honestly understand where he's coming from, because he's right. He brings danger, and it is scary to have the thought of one of your loved ones being killed because of somebody that doesn't like you, and that's terrifying. I really like in this movie that he has more of a moral compass, and that's not to say he didn't have one in the first movie, but in this one it seems a lot more realistic. The next character is Gwen Stacy, played by Emma Stone. Yet again, she is a fantastic character that actually does have a good impact on the movie and doesn't just shit on Peter. What I seem to really like about her is the fact that she is accepting of Peter being Spider-Man, and she never argues about why he should be Spider-Man and whether or not she's more important than crime fighting. The other great thing about her character is the fact that she actually is quite helpful. What I mean by this is the fact that she was able to help Peter by giving Peter the idea to magnetize his web shooters so that the electricity can't destroy them. The other thing was when she was the one to overload the power grid to ultimately destroy Electro. It's these key factors that without Gwen, Spider-Man could have lost, and that would have been awful. This is what I like to see in movies, where the love interest actually does do something instead of just sitting there looking pretty. It's really too bad though that she had to die. So let's talk about Electro, played by Jamie Foxx. I'm going to say that Jamie Foxx is the perfect casting for Electro. Did they really do justice to his character in this movie? Well, no. But I do think Jamie Foxx could pull it off given the right script. To be fair, this critique may be a little more biased just because I have seen Spider-Man No Way Home and that rendition of Electro, so I'm just saying that just to warn you that I may be a little biased here. I gotta say, he's not a really compelling character, because he's supposed to be this badass villain, but they make him this introverted nobody that seems to get picked on by everybody. I didn't really like that aspect of his character, because he didn't feel like a threat. Sure, he had the immense power of electricity, but to see where that is coming from doesn't make him a threat, because he's only doing this because the world treated him like crap. Not because he wants to take over the world or anything, but just because he'd been bullied. For me, that is not a compelling reason to make Electro hate Spider-Man so much. Another little nitpicky thing I want to point out about this character is that they somehow try to make him look like a psycho, but it really does not land properly and just makes him look like a weirdo. I also want to mention the character design. This character design looks awful, and I don't know why Sony decided that this was a cool design. They probably wanted to move away from his comic book look, just because they were probably afraid that would look too goofy, and honestly this felt like they weren't creative enough to come up with a cooler design. Also, why did they have to make him blue? I understand that they're trying to make him look like he's made of pure electricity, but at the same time, he just doesn't look human. When you first look at him, you don't know that's Jamie Foxx. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but what I am saying is that they could have not made him just blue. It is now time to talk about the worst character in this entire movie, and I think you know exactly who I'm about to talk about. And that is Green Goblin / Harry Osborn, played by Dane DeHaan. Why was he in this movie? I swear the only reason why they put him in this movie was so then he can get all pissy and turn into the Green Goblin and kill Gwen Stacy. They try to make his character seem like he was best friends with Peter. But for me, that doesn't work out because he was not mentioned once in the first movie, wasn't shown or anything. So we were introduced to this brand new character, and we are supposed to immediately like him because he's Peter Parker's best friend, even though they haven't seen each other in 8 years. I'm going to talk about his character design as well, and it's even worse than Electro. I understand that Green Goblin is not supposed to be the most attractive being, but did they have to make him this weird looking? I will admit that his power armor is a cool idea, but otherwise he just looks awful. They had no reason to have Green Goblin in this movie. That's all I have to say about his character for now, but I will talk about him later. Immediately, the first thing that jumps out about this movie is Gwen Stacy's death. Once we forget about how she died and what led up to her death, we come to a fantastic scene. There was so much emotion packed into this one scene that this was easily the best part of the movie. It wasn't great because she died. It was great because of Andrew Garfield's acting. This scene alone shows how good of an actor he is, because it really felt like real emotion. I myself started to get teary-eyed just because of how sad it was and how real he made it feel. Besides the fact that we cared so much for Gwen Stacy as a character, it was so upsetting to see the fact that Peter tried so hard to keep her safe, and yet in the end she still died. It was definitely a powerful scene, and it really does show that with the right writing, as well as the right actor, a scene could be really, really well done. And it shows that Andrew Garfield is indeed a great Spider-Man. I really like the final fight scene between Spider-Man and Electro, especially the part where Electro plays Itsy Bitsy Spider in the power coils. I know it may seem goofy to a lot of people, but I feel like it just added some entertainment to the scene overall. And it did kind of feel like in the realm of Spider-Man, but to be fair, that feels like a joke Spider-Man would make, and not the villain. Overall though, it was still a pretty funny and cool scene as well. I gotta say that the slow motion was really well done in this movie. I noticed it was a lot more prominent in this movie than it was in the first one, and I'm glad that they added that detail. It's just the action alone with the slow motion makes it feel fantastic, and yet again, like I mentioned in prior movie reviews, I really like seeing slow motion, especially when it is done properly. It also, in my opinion, shows how good the VFX artists really are, and they should really be appreciated more. The final good thing I will talk about is the music. I think the electronic style of music in this movie fits perfectly with Electro. I swear every fight scene, as well as any scene with Electro, is boosted so much just because of the music alone. I think if the music was not great, then these scenes would have been bad, but the music just makes it feel amazing. One thing that I noticed was the fact that in the first fight scene of the movie with Spider-Man and Electro, I noticed that there was one part of it that was cut. The scene was when a car was being thrown at a police officer, and Spider-Man saved him by catching the car. In the original movie, they had epic music playing, and him just standing above the cop holding the police car. In this version, that scene is cut out. I would like to mention that I watched this on Disney+, so maybe it was cut as soon as they put it on there, but I'm not sure. What I am sure of is the fact that it was cut very poorly. What I mean by this is the fact that you can slowly hear the riser of the epic music starting to play, and then it immediately cuts off, and it's very distracting. I also noticed that the next few scenes right after that cut are really confusing and weird, and they happen so fast that you can clearly tell that something was cut, even if you weren't paying attention. The reason why I mention this is because it was cut from the movie so poorly, and I wish that they did a better job of doing it, because this was just distracting. Speaking of that fight scene in Times Square, I noticed a neat little detail that when Spider-Man was saving the pedestrians off of that walkway that were about to touch the metal rails, I noticed that some of those characters were actually not real. What I mean by this is that some of the people that he saved were not real people, and they were in fact CG models. I just found that really cool, and just wanted to mention it. I know it's not a bad thing or a good thing, but it's just a neat little detail that I wanted to mention. Okay, this is the last time I'm going to mention the fight scene in Times Square. I noticed that the first fight just ended abruptly. Electro was destroying the place and suddenly Spider-Man just hit him with a fire hose, and that was the end of the fight. I was expecting Spider-Man to swoop in and beat the hell out of him, and then he had him restrained and sprayed him with water or something. But no, they just spray him in the end. Can we talk about the stupid montages in this movie? The first montage was incredibly bad, just because of the music choice. I know I said the music was really good in this movie, but in the first montage, suddenly the genre of music just changes. It went straight to folk music, and I'm sitting here thinking, you set the tone that we were going to have some badass electronic music, and then you just shove this song in there out of nowhere? Not to mention that it's just a shitty song altogether. Then they had another montage of Spider-Man trying to figure out what happened to his parents. The second montage wasn't as bad, but the thought that went through my head was the fact that, why are these being showed in montage form? I say this because a lot of the stuff that was happening during these montages were intriguing, and I thought they could have really made a good side plot out of this, instead of just smashing it into a 1-minute segment of the movie. They could have easily cut out many other scenes in this movie just to focus on that. Now that I think of it, they could have completely just scrapped Harry Osborn's storyline out of the movie and then replaced it with Spider-Man doing his detective work, and that would have actually made this movie a lot better in my opinion. There was a scene early in this movie where Peter was talking to Harry, and Peter mentioned that Spider-Man is a sign of hope for New Yorkers. Somehow in Harry's eyes, he sees this as a reason to ask Spider-Man for a blood sample. This to me feels like they're trying to force the conflict between Harry and Spider-Man. And speaking of this, I thought that Peter should have done a lot more to help him. I say this because Peter Parker is a scientist, and he knows a lot about that stuff. So couldn't he have just tried to help Harry come up with a cure or a medication to help him? Let's not forget that he helped Kurt Connors in the first movie to come up with the cross-genetic stuff. I just feel like Peter could have said that he didn't know Spider-Man, but I could help you come up with some ways to help you with your disease to either slow it down or cure it altogether. But no, he just went, I don't know, Spider-Man, and then left it. There is also this part of Oscorp that was called the Special Projects Program. From what I gather, this program is to give them an upper hand in the military with special exoskeleton type armor. This is obviously a secret program that needs to be kept under wraps. But don't you think that as soon as Harry became the CEO of Oscorp that he would have known about this? I mention this because when Harry is out, he goes to all these measures to get the cure for his disease. But again, don't you think he would have known about this if he was the CEO? To me, it feels like they completely forgot about that thought, just so then again, they can have a way to introduce Green Goblin. And it just makes it feel more lazy. This movie is trying to introduce and do so many things that it messes with everything. Let me explain. So in my opinion, there was 4 different plots that they were trying to mix together. They had plot A, and that was Spider-Man vs. Electro. Then plot B was Peter and Gwen's love story. Plot C was Harry Osborn. And plot D was Peter trying to figure out what happened to his parents. There may have been a plot E where they were trying to create the Sinister Six. My point in saying this is the fact that they tried to shove too much into this movie. This was the exact same thing that happened to Spider-Man 3, where Sony walked in and said, hey, we want to introduce these characters. Can you introduce all of them in only 2.5 hours? This feels like Sony is pushing into the movie yet again, and it seemed to ruin yet another series of Spider-Man movies. I feel like the only reason why the current Spider-Man, played by Tom Holland, is not ruined is because Marvel is keeping Sony in check. But I digress. The other thing that makes me scratch my head is the fact that Harry wants Spider-Man dead. This is going to be another long one, but here we go. So Spider-Man told Harry that no, he will not give him his blood. And that kind of makes sense as to why Harry would want to kill him so then he can get some of Spider-Man's blood. The problem with this is that he has been told by Felicia, his secretary, that there is a secret lab in Oscorp that could help cure Harry. That's great, because now Harry no longer needs Spider-Man's blood. Harry then goes to Electro, asking him to kill Spider-Man so he can get some of his blood. My question is, why in the hell are you sending Electro to kill Spider-Man for his blood if you know for a fact that there is a cure within your own building? Now it just feels like that you just want to straight up murder Spider-Man for shits and giggles. It just doesn't make sense to me. Don't worry, I'm almost done with my ranting. I have an issue with the last fight scene between Electro and Spider-Man. So Electro took down the power grid because he wanted ultimate power, and so that knocked out all of the power in the city, and that included the watchtowers for airplanes. Suddenly, we were cutting to air traffic control, trying to figure out how to talk to the airplane, and the pilot's trying to figure out how to talk to air traffic control. They are doing this while Spider-Man and Electro are fighting. Do you know what that means? That means that they are cutting from Spider-Man's fight to these random people that we have never seen before and that we are supposed to care about. I know what they were probably trying to do, and what they were trying to do was raise the tension, but it did not raise the tension at all. What would have raised the tension was if we had no cuts in the fight scene at all, and then it should have shown us that Electro was getting the upper hand over Spider-Man, and that Gwen Stacy was having an issue with the controls or something. That's what would have raised the stakes, not introducing us to random characters that we do not care about while there is a fight scene going on that we really want to watch. My last and final complaint about this movie is yet again about Green Goblin. How did the Green Goblin know how to fight so well against Spider-Man? I know you can say that, well, he has an exoskeleton power armor, so of course he's able to fight better. For me, that is not a good argument, because the only thing that would help Green Goblin fight Spider-Man in the power suit is his agility as well as his strength. I will admit that yes, that would indeed help you in a fight, but that doesn't make you a good fighter. What makes you a good fighter is training for a very long time. And for Green Goblin to have only been in that power armor for, let's say, an hour, he would not have enough time to train and figure out how to fight on a glider so high up in the air. This was a long-ass review, now wasn't it? It felt more like a rant kind of video than anything else, but in all honesty, to your surprise, I actually really liked this movie. What I am doing here, though, is talking about it from a reviewer's perspective, not a fan's perspective per se. It is from a fan's perspective, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. In the end, if you completely ignore all the problems, this movie actually isn't that bad. Andrew Garfield is a fantastic Spider-Man in my opinion, and in no way am I saying he's the best Spider-Man, and actually in my opinion all the Spider-Man are great. But this movie, though, from a reviewer's perspective, is bad. There are so many story faults, and the fact that they're trying to mash too much into this movie, I just feel like that this actually is the worst Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. You can't believe how much I hate saying this, but yes, this is a bad Spider-Man movie. And for this reason, I'm going to give this movie an unfortunate 4 out of 10. I know that seems really harsh, but from what you have heard, there are a lot of problems with this movie, and I wish that Sony would stop trying to intervene and just let the director direct and the writers write. Anyways, let me know in the comment section below whether you like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 or not, and please leave a like, and consider subscribing if you want to see more reviews like this. And thank you all so much for watching. See you in the next review.